Hello, allow me to present another painting to you. I'd like to start out with an apology. My camera, I'd forgotten to switch off the autofocus, so sometimes the camera focuses on the painting and sometimes it focuses on my hand, causing a slight sort of shimmering effect, so sorry about that. And secondly, for most of the video the painting is rotated a couple of degrees to the left, despite the fact that the viewfinder in the camera showed me that I was filming it straight. It is actually slightly rotated, so sorry about that. I'm not going to speed this one up at all, so the full film is getting on for an hour long, so I'm not going to comment all the way through. I will add comments where I think they're valuable, but I'm not going to speak for an hour. You may well be pleased to hear. We've had snow for a few weeks, so I thought I'd get around to painting a snow scene. This is based on a photograph that my wife took a couple of days ago. I have a rule which, although there are plenty of photographs and images on the interwebs that you can base paintings on, I have a rule that I only use my own photographs, or in this instance I can stretch it to one that my wife took, and that means mostly I paint local scenes. I have done paintings of various places I've been to, such as the Shetland Isles. I've done paintings from there, but mostly it's just local scenery. The sky mixture is the ultramarine blue with cerulean blue, and then a little bit of warmth down at the bottom in the snow, using the natural sienna. That you might think I'm doing a bunch of small trees on the horizon there, but hopefully things will become clear shortly. Again, using my old bristle brush, which I've mutilated with a nail clipper, so the length of the bristles is very uneven, as you can see, and is very suitable for this sort of stippling effect that I'm looking for there. You see, I can't say never, but in paintings like this I don't draw anything first with a pencil. Just have a fairly clear idea in my head what I want to do. I'm now adding in the desert green from Schmincke, which is a bit of a misnomer, you would have thought, since there's not an awful lot of greenery in deserts, but that's what they call it. It is it's a very good colour in this instance, using to create some pine trees. It's also a very nice, it's one of the super granulating colours, and you'll see later on in this video how it does actually separate out very nicely, giving some free texture, and it actually separates out into almost two separate colours. So I'm just trying to define the edges of some trees here and build up the body of the trees. That edge is one I'm going to be, the left hand edge there, one I'm going to be leaving, so that's why I'm giving it some thought. And now the ground that the trees are standing on. Again, this little brush that I use is very good for just creating uneven edges. As you can see, I just flick it up slightly and it gives the impression of grass. What you don't see when I speed the film up to 400% is me thinking about things, hesitating, what exactly what am I going to do. Now I am painting some pine trees in the middle distance, and that's the side that the sun is catching, so I'm using the same mixture of natural sienna and a tiny bit of Schmincke desert orange, and then filling the shaded side of the trees with the desert green. Still using the same brush. See, works well for trees that are a bit further away as well. And then thinking to myself, trying to think, okay, where is the sun hitting these trees? And one's all the way furthest on the left, not getting any sun at all. You can just about see the paint start to separate out into a darkish red, reddish brown, and a sort of olive green. Bringing the trees down towards the ground. Trying to decide exactly what the ground should look like. And then, as I've mentioned previously, in situations like this, the tree all the way on the left, I usually make it the tallest tree as a sort of visual stop, and then just tiny amounts of the yellow mixture to give the impression that the sun is hitting the trees at the top there. And then this is the bank on the side of the road. Mixing a few new colours. For some reason I thought I'd try a fan brush for this next group of trees. Didn't actually make any difference, to be perfectly honest. A little bit too soft. That's a new series of brushes from Rosemary and Company called the Red Dot. It's a sort of synthetic fibre, which is very good for watercolour, but that particular fan brush is a little bit too soft. Not really getting anywhere with it. And I am in any case going to use the spray bottle to soften the edges. A little bit too much leakage out into the sky there, so just dab it with some tissue paper. It's all looking a bit strange at the moment. I do have a plan, I promise you. So back to the stipple brush or the bristle brush. No real point in carrying on with the fan brush. Wasn't really making any difference. As you can see, you get pretty much the same results with a different brush, or the other brush. And then just tying the whole thing together. And then fairly neat, undiluted is what I mean by that, undiluted desert green. The yellow is still wet, so you can see the paint bleeding up into it to give a soft edge. And starting to define the bank on the right hand side of the road. Even though there's snow, it's not thick enough to cover the ground completely, so there are still little bits of grass and dirt showing through the snow. The ground under pine forests is usually really scruffy, dead twigs, branches, tree stumps lying around. So I'm just trying to create a feel of an uneven floor, forest floor. Possibly just drinking a cup of tea there. Don't know what I was doing there, to be honest. A hint of a shadow coming out into the road. And starting to build up the field to the left of the road. Bushes on the edge of the road. Again with the same principle, sunlit to the right, shadow to the left. I find it really interesting with watercolour how little colour you actually need on your brush to have an effect. Of course, it's not a bad idea to use good quality paints so that there's a lot of pigment in the paints. And trying to use brush strokes that give the direction of the land. So a couple of horizontal strokes there, the grass sort of edging out into the road. Left a couple of white, very very small white patches under those trees to hint at a view of the sky between the trunks of the trees. And now we're going to start painting some tree trunks on the right hand side. Some very young trees, not much growth, not much girth to the trunks. I'm doing this whilst the ground is still a little bit damp, so that the base of the tree, the bottom base of the tree trunks disappears into the ground. Slightly bigger brush, thicker tree trunk. Same thing there, make it disappear at the bottom. Not quite strong enough in terms of tone, so giving it a little bit more paint. Another thick tree trunk. Don't mind too much that it's not perfectly straight, gives it a little bit of character. See, I keep at least one, no, quite often two brushes in my left hand so that I can swap backwards and forwards. The thing about watercolour painting is you have to get on with it once you've started, so it's always good to have quick access to the things you need. Thinking about where do I want a tree? A happy little tree just there. I'm entirely sure why I'm thinking about things so much there. It's just to paint some trees, isn't it? Again with the indecision. Even though I know what I'm doing. What I'm doing there is we're just washing. I've decided where I want the sun in that particular patch. So just painting a tree trunk with clear water because it's completely burnt out with the sun behind it, which is essentially borrowing what I call a photographic language, visual language, because it doesn't happen in real life, it only ever happens in photos. And again, essentially a white sky is only always very common in photos, not so common in real life. Just softening the edges. And a couple of other trees that reinforce the feeling of the image being burnt out. And just softening that edge with plain water. And essentially drawing a circle by not drawing it or painting it. Dab with paper. Slightly too much paint there in that place. Softening the edge with water. And having done the difficult bit, just starting to fill in. Oh, accidentally straightened out the painting and then put it back at an angle again, because it is actually parallel. Oh, we've knocked the camera there. It is actually parallel to the desk. The desk, as you can see, is a bit of a disgrace. I don't quite know how I managed to get it covered in paint as that, but I shall try and do something about that, I think. That's oil paint, so it doesn't actually come off all that easily. Probably have to get some sort of sanding machine to it, which I don't really feel like doing at the moment. And the odd horizontal or side branches from these trees. You have to be a bit careful with walking in pine forests. You can get these spiky side branches in your face. But there are also quite a lot of random things on the forest floor, branches that have fallen, dead trees, tree trunks. And now using a fairly concentrated mix of the desert green, starting to create the actual most of the foliage for these two, or this bunch of pine trees on the right hand side. Deciding that's more or less the right tone, or at least initial colour to start creating the trees. Again with the bristle brush. I don't know if it's apparent, but I do actually have the board which the paper is stretched onto is propped up at the top end on a small block of wood, so that the colour runs down the page slightly. Now we're making some decisions here. Where does the tree go to? How tall is it? And again, I've framed things slightly badly, that the top of the window is actually the top of the painting. You're not really missing much at the top there, but I should have zoomed the camera out a little bit further. Still, live and learn. Still sticking with the same desert green. Not in any real hurry. I think I might just have knocked the camera then again. Need to remember, painting pine trees, the branches actually point upwards. Shouldn't really be any hesitation there, to be honest. It's just to fill in the colour. A little bit too much paint on the brush, in fact. Trying to create the feeling of individual small branches. I was going to say leaves, but there aren't leaves on these pine trees. There are needles, of course. So I'm looking at clumps of needles. So I'm just filling in the nearest trees with the desert green. Still can't quite get used to calling it that, because I want to call it forest green, but it's not forest green, it's desert green. And having said in my previous video that I very rarely use black, I'm about to use some black. This is deep sea black, again from Schmincke. Just filling in the main body of the trees to give them a bit more visual weight. and working whilst the previous colour is not dried yet. And deciding the tree trunk is probably not dark enough, so just darkening that gently, at least down the middle of the trunk, and making sure it sits in the ground by giving them where it meets the ground equal value. And that's a long brown hair that had somehow landed on the painting, which I don't quite know where that comes from, because my hair is certainly not long and brown, and neither is my wife's. It's a mystery. Same with that tree trunk, deciding it's not quite dark enough. Same there with the ground, trying to give that area of the ground a bit more visual weight. Easy to draw the little spiky branches going out towards the right. For me it's much harder to draw the ones on the left, which is why you see me always do the ones on the right first. I will eventually put some in on the left, I hope. Just strengthening the tree trunks, just trying to make the little patch of trees feel a bit more random and organic. Just going over existing trunks. And as I said, you often find branches just sort of sticking up out of the ground at an angle. In this sort of area, that sort of forest, often enough to know what to expect. And there was just a little bit of wobble in that tree trunk that was annoying me, so we fixed it. because the paint is still wet, you can see there's still some glare on the paper, which is a bit deceptive. Adding strength to the trees again. Slightly thicker version of the black. In my defence, it doesn't come across as black when it dries, so it's sort of blending in with the green that's there. Speed things up a bit with a bigger brush. Just trying to think to myself, where is the sun not getting through the trees? Of course that would be in the middle where the trunk is, but also towards the bottom where the branches are a lot thicker. So I took the sky colour, which you can see in the middle well there in my little palette, which was the ultramarine blue, which I've said, and the cerulean blue, and added a touch of the desert orange. And I think I got it exactly right. And when you do that, and those of you who paint, you'll recognise this, when you mix a paint, mix a colour that is exactly right for the situation you want to use it in, you'll get a real sort of kick out of it. I just think it's one of the real joys of painting when you get something right. And you can just merrily paint away. There are of course variations because of the way I'm painting it with a big brush, trying to create a few variations so that you get little wells of colour, leaving a little bit of snow catching the sunlight. Slightly weaker concentration of the colour for the shadows which are further away. Don't really know where those shadows are coming from, but it's just to create a bit of a visual interest up there. And again creating we're sort of pre-programmed to look for contrast in paintings. But that can also not just tonal values I'm talking about, but also a combination of thick and thin lines creates visual interest which stimulates us. Which is why I'm doing those. Something there was annoying me, clearly, don't know what it was. And for some reason I'm mixing my paint on the paper, on the test paper at the side there, which is a bit of a strange thing to do, but as you can see I don't really have any spare. Areas of my palette there. So now I'm just adding implying some wheel tracks. Which help lead the eye into the painting. Disappearing in the snow at that point. Softening those edges ever so slightly, and then starting to add small footprints. Very easy to be too regular when you're doing things like this. You'll see at the moment I'm just sort of filling in the whiter areas. But it's important to increase the feeling of the shadow in the areas that have already got shadow on them. Obviously, the closer they are to the camera, in inverted commas, the bigger the footprints would be. And there I'm adding some much darker footprints in the area that's already in shadow. Trying to, so you can see it's quite important there, the strengthening the shadow in the wheel track. I decided to make that a bit broader, I think, at this point. Yeah, so give it the feel of an actual wheel. There's been there. There are not many vehicles driving along there. I know where it is, that particular patch of road, and it's doesn't really lead anywhere. No real reason to drive there, to be honest. I hadn't used the spray bottle for a while, so felt like it was probably time. And that's just a very short bristle brush, just to soften, using plain water, just to soften the edges. Can't really see it at this resolution, but it's fairly important to do it. So that the snow has a softer feel to it, quite simply. And as I said, the snow's not deep enough to cover the ground completely, so when you have an uneven surface like we have on the right there, you can get little tufts of grass sticking up, little patches of bare earth. Just dabbing onto the brown stretching paper there just to take a bit of paint off the brush so that we can add the fine details. And this is just the desert green. Quite concentrated, not much water in it. Quick visit from the cat there. Everything seems to be in order, so off she goes again. I'm just trying to get the balance of grass and mud patches on the left there, and then just filling in slightly darker colour where the road meets the bank. I don't know there. Must have sprayed something. Can't see what though. And probably, as I usually do, some actual twigs sticking up out of the grass or the ground. Fairly concentrated black. Just taking the bristle brush and softening the edge of the snow before it moves into shadow to highlight on the snow. And a little bit more work on the footprints. No real plan, apparently, just doing things at random at the moment. And I've talked about this before with watercolors. They always dry lighter than you paint them initially, so yet another layer with the deep sea black. to really get the feel for the trees being backlit, although to be honest I've left them a lot lighter than they are in the photograph. Again, no particular hurry. And just trying to establish a consistent level of value. And so what I'm doing there is thinking, do I need a tree on the left hand side? So I'm using the handle of the brush to give myself an idea of what putting a tree there would look like, giving it some thought, and then using the shadow from my hand. If we get some foliage up there, what would that look like? And having thought about it for a few seconds, deciding that we do in fact need something on the left hand side. So no sooner decided than done. And the usual recipe: draw the trunk, take the bristle brush, lose the bottom of the trunk into the ground, and then start adding some needles. A fairly strong mixture of the forest green, and then just trying to find the right balance. Don't really want to take the focus away from the trees on the right too much, but just need to find, as I say, just find the balance. And having decided we need a bit more depth here on the left, might as well add a little bit more. I'm just deciding we need a few more random branches. And they do make quite a lot of difference visually, just these small sharp, i.e. in focus additions to establish the midground. To get the paint thick enough to be seen, but it's also sometimes difficult to paint when it's that thick with a rigger brush. I'm deciding that the patch of trees on the right is not quite, I don't, what's the word, I don't know, not quite chaotic enough. Just reinforcing the feel of the sun there burning through the trees. And just the addition of some further twigs sticking out of the bank on the right there. Almost pure black at this point, just to create the contrast needed so that they're visible. And I think that's about it. Thanks for watching.